Credit union leaders here at CUNA's Governmental Affairs Conference are heading to Capitol Hill for meetings with members of Congress. And in that realm, regulatory relief, is there an issue that you, your staff, and your credit union are focusing the most attention on right now, coming down the pike?
Well, right now, risk-based capital 2 is a concern of ours, and although the risk-based capital 2 proposal is far better than the first one that we received, the risk weightings, we are very happy with a lot of the changes that were made, but there's still some elements in that we are concerned about. One of the things that we're going to need to do with the proposal, and we certainly need to comment on, is the written plan that's going to be required for our capital. And within that written plan, the proposal targets complex credit unions, and that's any credit union that's 100 million in assets or greater. But we know that that one strategy, it's not a one measurement fits all. Every institution's different. Their composition of their balance sheet's different. The complexity of the investments and the loans they do, it's different. So to group all of the credit unions into that one definition is difficult. And that's something that, we're looking at that. We're also looking at the capital requirement. There's a provision in there that may allow the examiners to say, okay, although you're within your 10% capital ratio, we may require you to have additional capital because you may have certain elements of risk. And we measure risk in many different ways as well. So that's a concern, and we want to really look at that and make sure that we're not, although they've told us that this only affects, I believe it was 24 credit unions that was said this morning, that's something that may impact all of us, any of the credit unions that are 100 million and greater. So we're concerned about that.
We're going to meet our congressman, and we've just spoken to our Senator Warren. One of the biggest issues that our credit union is concerned about is data security and the fact that there hasn't been any addressing of the retailer's responsibility for that. So we just talked to Senator about that, and we're going to speak to our congressman about that.
So that's been an issue for
Yes,
your
it has.
credit union?
It's been a very expensive proposition for us when retail merchants compromise our data, and we have to reissue debit cards for our members and notify them of the compromise. That has been a problem for several years, starting back in the early 2000s, and it hasn't been properly addressed since then.
Aside from data security, is there another issue that you're going to press in meetings with lawmakers?
Yes, we're going to talk about the new risk-based capital proposal, Proposal 2, that DNCUA just came up with. We think that that needs to be reanalyzed and thought about before any type of implementation is done, and we don't think the appropriate structure is in place with the present proposal, and it needs to be refined before any type of risk-based capital proposal is put in place.
First of all is the taxation issue, which is always apparent with the banks, secondary capital, and also the regulatory burden that we keep having to deal with. It gets tougher and tougher each year, especially the smaller credit unions who are out there trying to do the good things for all of the members, to continue to have to be burdened and layered upon layer upon layer of stuff, and it's difficult to keep up to, quite honestly. It's difficult to stay with your mission when you have to deal with all of those things.
Like the CFPB regulations and rules.
Yeah, all of that stuff just seems to be compounding itself. And we don't know what the ultimate goal is and what's going to end up happening because it's still changing and being put together. But it was encouraging to hear Senator Warren talk about a few different things and how she framed it.
Did she say anything that was reassuring, like that things might be changed, or was she, receptive to what you were talking about?
I wish she could have been more clear on a few of the items, but I don't think she can at this point, so I appreciate and respect that.
On the top of our list was the breach issue, specifically the responsibility that we want to put back on the retailers to disclose when the breach happens so that we're not 10 and 12 months out and just learning about the breach, and meanwhile our members have been affected for over a long period of time.
And other than data security, the notification requirement, any other issues that you talked about with members, regulatory issues, for example?
We did talk about the regulatory relief and looking at the burden of regulations and also the pace of regulations. We also talked about the member business loan limit and hopefully increasing the cap to 27%. And then we also talked about tax exemption which is really a nonprofit status, as we learned this morning from Jim Nessel. So that was a really good meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about breach, how it affected my members specifically, and some specific member situations. So to really bring it home.
I think that the most important issue for my particular credit union is the MBL, the cap on the MBL lending. We actually have the waiver and we are above the cap, but in case anything goes wrong, that's going to be a significant issue for our credit union and in particular for our members. The second very important issue for us is the risk-based capital. I know we have the second proposal, it's much better, but still there are a lot of questions to be asked, and I think that the proposal requires many changes or adjustments. The third issue is the card service, credit card issue, the credit card issue and the responsibility of the merchants for their actions, for the data breach, because as of now, as the credit unions and other financial institutions, they're paying the price for the breaches, and the merchants are totally, unaccountable for them. And that we're not talking only about the financial losses related to that, but also about the confidence in our institutions from our members, and this is very important. So from my perspective, these are the three most important issues what I would like to discuss with the members of Congress or Senate.
The biggest issues they're talking about is maintaining our tax status. It's very important not to lump us in with the big banks because we're important to the economy, but we're not so big that, how can I put this? We're not so big that we're not there for the common person, the middle class. That's really what our focus is, because we're working people working together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And other than the tax status, is cybersecurity another issue that you're going to ask lawmakers for action on?
Definitely on that, because with so many the credit unions being small, we don't have the resources or the ability to get together with on cybersecurity, and the talent is just not there. We need the government to bring the talent in and work with us and help us work on that for everybody, because they could use a small credit union to get into large institutions, because our members are everywhere and they're working with everything, and once they get into one account, they're going to get into any account anywhere.
In Washington, I'm Nicholas Balassi, Credit Union Times.